Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is session number 113 in Sonship orientation. Now, today you only have a chart. And I put that chart in the back, or you may already have it put on your table, but the reason that you have this chart instead of notes is not because I got lazy on you. Let me explain. You are going to get notes, but you're not going to get them till the end. And the reason that you're not going to get them to the end is because today, as we get ready to move back to Romans 8, I need to probe your thinking and make sure that this group really is where it needs to be. I need you to be able to articulate what you're thinking. And so I'm just kind of letting you fly blind a little bit today. And this will make me feel better about knowing that we're right where we're supposed to be. So let's get ourselves started with the first, with the two verses that we've been looking at in the table of contents, starting with Proverbs 1:5. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Now, if that little chart that I put in front of you today looks similar to one that I gave you before, let me tell you that what we're going to do today is we're going to, I know this may not make much sense to you, but when I give you material, sometimes I give it to you in a very general way, knowing that later, once you've got that down, we're going to come back and add some finer details to that, which is going to kind of fine-tune the way you understand it. Today is a fine-tuning day. Today, you're going to move beyond what you understood before, and you're going to understand some particulars that other chart's not wrong, but it wasn't as detailed or as complete. And so you have some things that you'll be filling in on that chart today, and we'll be looking at those things together. Now, level 3 of your sonship, and I'm just going to use what's on the board up here. See, because this is the way that chart looked to you in the beginning. But if you'll notice, if you look at your chart now, you'll see there's a couple of things that are kind of different on your chart, not different, that are on your chart that are not actually on this board. And so, again, this is the areas that we're going to be looking at. So, as you look at these two, here's what I would like for you to do. Because it's not on your chart, I want to make it, well, it is on your chart now, but it wasn't before. I want to make this clear. Phase 1 of level 3 is this. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. There you are. Phase 2 is a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. And then verse 6, you know, we've talked about understanding a proverb and the dark sayings, also fits into phase 2. Now, I'm dividing it up that way because I want you to see that primarily phase 2 is for a man of understanding who is going to attain unto wise counsels. There's something about that we haven't talked about yet. And as a matter of fact, if I can kind of lay out the lesson today, we have 3 things that are left to do to get ourselves back to Romans 8. We're going to do 2 of them today. One of them, did I get my timer started? Okay. One of them is we are going to look at the exhortations for level 3. You already know that they're sitting over in Proverbs chapter 9. I told you that last week. The other thing is, just for a little, I'm going to show you something about the doctrine. This is in Israel's program, but the doctrine that also goes with level 3. But now I don't want to just show you the doctrine in Israel's program. I want to show you how that fits in with their exhortations. But I'm also going to take you to the doctrine in Paul's epistles that ours is going to parallel that. And the way I'm going to title this is, first, and 2 Thessalonians. Because that's the area we've been talking about. And I know that for those of you that have been reading 1 and 2 Thessalonians, when you know what level 3 is about, I know you're scratching your head and you're saying to yourself, how does that work? Now, somebody tell me in a nutshell, what is the difference between level 3 and those first 2 levels? Okay, Gloria?
The first 2 levels are as a son, you're learning.
Okay.
And the 3rd level is teaching as a father.
Okay. The first 2 levels. Now, let me ask you this. Where does the curriculum itself really come to an end? As a son, I mean, you know, I know the curriculum takes you all the way through level 3, but as far as being able to function in your Father's business, how far do you have to go to be able to do that? Level 2. Okay, you understand that. Okay, because that's what Gloria said is right, and what you just answered is right. I want to make sure that you have that in your thinking. If you get to level 2, you have done everything you'll need to do to be able to fully function in your Father's business, to sit in those heavenly places, make wise decisions on His behalf, and all of that. But there's something else that needs to be added to that if this is ever going to survive just us. If it's going to go down to the next group. And it doesn't matter if you're like Audie and you're on the younger end of this, or, you know, if you're on the older, I'm not picking anybody out for that. If you're on the older end of this, well, I got myself in trouble right there. I mentioned Audie. That almost makes me think I got to mention. So if you're like Milt and you're old as dirt, okay, I pick on Milt because he'll let me do that. Anybody else, I'll get beat up. All right. Oh, I had Bob sitting there. I could have used Bob. See? What good is it? Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're on the younger end or the older. Oh, Barbara's trying to make him feel better because, you know, oh, he acted so pathetic back there. You should have seen it up here. I wish the camera could have picked. Okay. So anyway, thanks, Milt, for letting me pick on you. So why do you have deacons if you can't do that, right? Here we are laughing again. Barbara. Gloria missed last week. She said, I watched the DVD. The second session, I spent the first 15 minutes laughing. What was going on? I said, well, we were celebrating the fact you weren't here. So doesn't matter if you're on the younger end or the older end. It doesn't matter. You're part of this generation of, when I say this generation, I'm talking about we're not the same age, but we're all going through sonship at this level together. There's going to be a group that may come in behind us that are going to be a generation behind. Think about when we're over here and then we get an influx of people that are going to start out back here. Now there is a way to handle that in this assembly. And we'll talk about that. But my point is, they're not going to be able to just jump right in to level 2 sonship. That just won't happen.
You're going to have a morning and evening class.
Yeah. I actually had a different idea, but that's one idea. Okay. So here's the 3 things that we're going to do. We're going to do 2 of these today. And then next week, I'm going to take the first, at least part of the first. Quit laughing. You know, that just really hurts right here when y'all do that. I make a statement and you don't believe me. I'm gonna I don't even want to look at y'all. Okay, I'm going to spend part of, I know, I've earned it. I know, I've earned it. I'm going to spend part of next week's session doing the 3rd one, and then we'll be back in Romans 8. I promise. I promise. That's my intention. Okay. Now, I told you last time that all the exhortations that go with this, and by the way, I should have put these up on the board, huh? Okay, let me do it like this. I'm going to write these in. I really need a different color to write these in, and I'm probably not going to be able to come up with that. If I put it in another color, it'll kind of stand out. Let me see if I can do this. Hopefully this will work. I'm going to help you fill in your chart so that you can see where all the exhortations go. By the way, we could just start off, we could just look at that chart and start off, but let's start off on level 3. Where do you find the exhortations in Israel's program? You know it's sitting in the book of Proverbs. Where do you find the exhortations for level 3? Okay, so that is going to be Proverbs chapter 9, verses 1 through 17. And you can fill that in on your chart. That's where you're going to find the exhortations. Now, does anybody remember what the level 2, where you find the exhortations for level 2? I know we're working backwards, but that's all. You know it's going to be in the book of Proverbs. Anybody? This is a tough one. I haven't asked you to memorize this. The fact that you didn't memorize it doesn't mean a thing.
Chapter 6.
Yeah, chapter 6, verse 20. And where does it go through?
35.
Well, yeah, it goes through 35, but what? Yeah, it's got to go through the end of 8. Now, okay, so Gloria's right. It goes through the rest of the chapter, but it's got to go all the way through, because or you'll have a gap between, 7 and 8. What happened, Everybody with me there? Okay. Now, I have it at one time, I may have broke this down into this much is phase 1 and this much is phase 2. I haven't done that with you in level 3 at all. And I'll just say to you that I see a couple of different places where that break could be made in level 3, and I haven't fully settled my mind on that. So it's not important for you to get it right now anyway. One day when I'm a level 3 son, I'll figure that out. But today, I can't. And I can argue that a couple of ways, but it's not important for our discussion. Now let's go to level 1. Now you know that to know wisdom and instruction, where does the exhortation start for this? That's right. It starts in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. Does anybody know how far it runs before it comes to the next part? You may have marked it in your Bible, is the only reason I'm saying that. Again, I don't expect you to memorize that. That's verse 19. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 to 19. That'll be the first box that you come to there in level 1. And then in part 2 of phase 1, that's this to perceive the words of understanding. I'm going to get rid of this level 1 thing. I can put it down here. This is going to be Proverbs chapter 2, verses 1 to 22. And now, so there's the 2 parts to phase 1. That takes you through chapter 2. Now you have in phase 2 of level 1, you have 4 main parts. What are those 4 main parts? There you go. I hear somebody saying it. Wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. So let me give you the exhortations for that. For wisdom, it's going to be chapter 3, verses 1 through 20. For justice, it's going to be chapter 3, verses 21 to 35. I know I'm bleeding over into the next section, but for judgment, it's going to be from chapter 4. Now, I have verse 10, but I think that ought to be 1. That's my mistake. I was just doing that out of my head. Chapter 4, verse 1, chapter 5, and verse 6. And then the fifth one runs what's the last verse in 6? Let me just look here. Oh, it's not going to go to the end. It's going to go to 6:19. The last one is going to be 5:7 to 6:19. Now, two of those, if we were actually studying Israel's program, we would tweak two of those just a little bit. There's actually some things that are sitting in between those last two sections that take up a few verses. I don't want to confuse you with that right now, so don't worry about that. We're just trying to make it all flow. Yes? Uh-huh.
So you have a gap that doesn't go till chapter 2 then?
Yeah, see, that's another one of those things. I started out giving you the technical thing of that, and then I thought better of it. In fact, I changed it. In fact, if you want, just so you'll have it down, I can tweak this a little bit and show you on these last two. Like this actually goes, that's 15. It actually goes from 4:15 to 5:6. I said 4:1 just because that was the next thing that took up. I'm sorry. Don't write a 5. Don't write a 5 if you already did. My bad. Sorry. It's 10. 4:10 to 5:6. Sorry. And on that last one, it's 15. It's actually 5:15 to 6:19. And there's a gap there too. And we haven't talked about that only because we're not really interested in Israel's program. We're not going to go into the Proverbs and dig that doctrine out and all that kind of business. But I was just trying to be technically correct about how that goes. So yeah, there is a gap there, and then there's a couple of gaps that are over here. But you can see though how this takes you through after the table of contents, which is verses 2 to 6. Then you start in 1:7 and you move your way all the way through Proverbs and you get to 9. And then what happens in Proverbs 10:1? Yes, then you start the doctrine. And the doctrine, that doctrine is going to run from chapter 10 verse 1 through what?
29.
Sure. 29, and I don't remember exactly how many verses are in there. I think it's like 36, but whatever it is, I'm going to write it up there, and that's probably not right, but however many verses are in chapter 9. I'm sorry, in chapter 29, it just runs all the way through the chapter. What happened to chapters 30 and 31? Those were prophecies for out in the future. Remember, we covered those last time. Okay, so here's doctrine. And remember, that's where we found those things we looked at that nobody's going to be able to understand until a man of understanding comes along out in the day of wrath. He's going to have the wisdom to be able to talk about the horse leech hath 2 daughters. And, we've already talked about that. Okay. So, and I think you understand, at least and kind of going through this, I think you understand that when you get to level 3, that what's going on, it's not that the son, let me be clear again, it's not that he's not learning anything, it's just he's not learning more curriculum like he was when he was going through it in level 1 and 2. In fact, well, we'll talk about that when we get, well, what will he be doing in level 3? Yeah, he'll be learning it so he can turn around and teach it to someone else. And what in the world does he have to learn? What is it that he needs to learn? What? Okay, and so what would be some of those things? I've summed it up in a single word. It doesn't have to be your word, but here's the one. He needs to learn the Father's methodology. Now, there's got to be a better word than that, but I mean, for right now, he's got to learn the Father's methodology for how to do this. And when I talk about methodology, it means that there's some things sitting in those passages that when the Son goes through, he doesn't even realize they're there, but the one teaching it knows that they're there. Give me an illustration or an example of what some of those things would be. Huh? Checkpoints. That would be, yeah, there's some markers in there and there's some checkpoints in there. And there are times when the Father's waiting to hear a certain thing out of the mouth of the Son to know He really does have this. Because it's just like, have you ever talked to somebody about rightly dividing the Word and they say, oh yeah, I get that, and the next thing out of their mouth is something out of the book of Hebrews. And you know what? In your mind, here's what you're thinking. If you really understood right division, you wouldn't have defaulted to that verse. See, when the guy was talking, before the service, I was talking about the Messianic guy that was teaching, and he was talking about Romans 8:14 and that we're sons. You know, the reference that he ran on that was John 1:12. But as many as received Him, to them gave He power to become the sons of God. But what Romans 8:14 is not talking about a son in the sense that you're part of God's family. It's talking about a son in the sense of what? Sonship is right, but I'd give me a different word. It's a son in adoption. Can you be a part of the family without being the adopted son? Yeah, absolutely. Just because you're part of the family, does that mean you want to participate in your Father's business? No, see? That's not an automatic.
Does God need to hear what we say in order to know how we're feeling?
Okay, that's a good point, because it says, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. And Bob's asking the question, does God need to hear that? Well, God does need to hear it, but He doesn't have to hear from you with an audible voice. He needs to hear it out of your heart. And He can do that. And that's why we're never going to have a time in this class where we say, all right, everybody that's crying Abba, Father, put your hand up. That's not how that'll ever be done. You'll do that, though. You may actually say to your Heavenly Father in your own sonship prayer life, I get it, I want it. I'm saying it to you right now. And Abba, Father, that word Abba is only a stylized, it is the word Father, but it's the stylized form of the word that a son would use. I didn't say to my male parent, Father. You know what I called him? I called him Dad. Some folks call their father Papa. And that's pretty close to what you're talking about when you talk about the word Abba, because it's that form of the word Father that has more intimacy connected to it than just the formal, Father. We use words like that all the time. If you use the formal term for someone who is the head of an assembly, you would say, he's the pastor. But usually, people that feel closer to you don't say pastor, they say what?
Brother.
Oh, they say brother? There's another word. Mike. I can go with that. Yeah, preacher. Yeah. This is my preacher. If you say this is my pastor, it's almost like I don't really know him that well, so I'm going to use this formal type of description, But you say, this is my preacher, it's a little more intimate. It's the difference. We used to learn this when we visited. You go up to a house to visit, and if you rang the doorbell, here's what you figure out after a while. Strangers usually ring the doorbell, friends knock. No, not in every case, but that's usually how that goes. And if people hear a knock, or they hear, I don't know. I just know that that's how that worked. And so we use those words. Now we.
Doorbell a lot.
Yeah, or little kids. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Okay. So, now that we've kind of gotten all those exhortations down, you understand how level 3 differs from level 2. What I want to show you now, and if you'll look on your chart, you'll not only see 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, but now I've added what? 1 Timothy to Philemon. Do you see that? Oh, you don't see that on your chart?
No. It's not on there.
It's not on your chart? Is this a chart you got off the table in the back?
Right down at the bottom.
It was on there.
It's the policy of.
Okay, I ate the pastoral epistles on the way in. I don't know. Is it on yours? Yeah, but and you should also have 1 Timothy to Philemon. You don't have that? Then please write it in. I'm sorry. I had it on there. I know I had it on there. For some reason, I guess I hit a button and bleeped it off. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know what I did. There is no telling. Okay, I don't know. I was busy watching preachers this morning, and, it just made me scatterbrained. Okay, so you want to write these in. And these pastoral epistles, you remember, why do we call them pastoral epistles? Don't think of a pasture like where you graze your animals, but a pastor as in a bishop. Why are they called pastoral epistles?
You're talking about the last Timothy?
Yeah, I'm talking about 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon.
They're for the pastor.
Yeah, that is for the leaders of an assembly who are going to be doing what? Leading folks through the curriculum. And guess who else they're for? They're not just for the pastors. Oh, okay. I got 2 good answers. Bertha says deacons, and she's right. Do you ever notice that the qualifications in your Bible for a deacon are almost identical for a pastor? Do you know why? Because they both got to be able to do that. And now, what did you say, Linda? You said anybody that's going to be a level 3 son is going to need that, right? And so what you're going to have over in these books is a whole lot of information that is dealing with you from the standpoint of a father rather than as a son. So I'm adding those things in because they really are doing that job. Now, with that in mind, when you're reading things over in 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, or Philemon, you're going to run into stuff. Now, let me show you an example of this on our PowerPoint. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Do you see the progression here? He says, he said, but here's Paul, and he taught Timothy, and then he says to Timothy, you commit this to faithful men who will be able to do what? Teach others also. See, and this is going to go. Do you see what's supposed to happen? This is supposed to survive more than just, I taught Timothy, and when you're gone, buddy, it's gone too. Now, unfortunately, that's the way this has happened. And every time sonship comes up, somebody has to dig it out of the dirt and act like it's the first time it's ever been done. We want to break that cycle. We want this to continue on. And we not only will do that in this assembly, but we'll do that through the media that we send out. We'll send out DVDs, we'll post on the internet, it'll be on YouTube, all the things that we're doing right now. But that's the whole idea. By the way, when you see that in 2 Timothy 2, isn't that the issue in level 3? Teaching others who will be able to teach, isn't that the issue of level 3? So when you get to the pastoral epistles, you know what you're really looking at? You're looking at more level 3 issues. Okay. Now, does everybody understand just that? Yeah. What I've said, in the general way that I've said it? Okay. Now, there's also, when you get your notes, I'm going to tell you that there was also another deal over in Titus. And I said, but I don't want to take the time to do that because, it's just the same kind of deal, passing it on. But then I changed my mind about a page later in the notes. I said, no, we have to look at the Titus thing after all. So rather than going back and amending those first notes, I changed my mind. And then we do Titus, okay? So you'll understand when you get over there, I'm just, that kind of person. But I want to make a point to you before we get over to Titus, and that's to look back at this. And here's what it doesn't say. Let me read it the wrong way, but this is the way we commonly do it. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same teach thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. Because when we think about this verse, we think we're going to teach someone who's going to turn around and teach someone. But he didn't use that word teach in the first one. He used the word commit. And commit is a stronger term. And I actually looked that word up, and to commit is to put into the hands of another or to put in trust. In other words, when Paul says this to Timothy, he says, you put this into the hands of men that you know what you're really doing? You are entrusting the future of sonship to these. And they need to understand what that is. Now he uses the word teach in the other because he's going back to what all that is. It's the education. But guess what? When these guys get ready to pass it on, do you know what they're really going to be doing? They're going to be committing it again to those who will teach others. But when they get it, and I kind of look at it like this, and I don't want to be too strict about it, but this is the teaching. But when you get all three levels, now you know what? It can be committed to you. Look, when you get to the end of level 2, do you have some things that you can teach somebody? Sure, you do. But when you're talking about commit it to them, I see the full scope of the education. This person, as a man of understanding, not only now knows this from the standpoint of a son, but knows it from the standpoint of a father. You can commit it to that person and know that it's in trust. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that up. Now as I take you over to Titus, what I'm about to show you now is something different than we talked about just a moment ago. I said for the pastor, of course, he's over here, wanting to get level 3 down. And by the way, really and truly, until you can go back and observe all the markers and all the checkpoints and really see this from the standpoint of a father, I cannot tell you how difficult it is to teach this curriculum. It is a scary thing because you're wondering, am I seeing everything that needs to be seen? And you want to preface every statement with, I reserve the right to come back and add something to this. You've heard me do that several times. Yeah, I'm confident that what I tell you is right. What I'm not confident is I know everything about it to say. And by the way, because I've gone through this with you, I can say things to the folks in Glen Rose I didn't even know to say when I went through this with you. Now, it's not going to change what was done to you, but what I'm saying is because I'm further along than I was when I was teaching this with you, I know how this is going to affect areas that I didn't know to tell you about before. Does that make sense? Same thing is going to be true with you. The further you're going to go along, you're going to do it. Can you see the wisdom then of saying, you know what, if you've gone all the way through the curriculum and then you've gone back as a father, you really are in a very good place to be able to say, let me lead you through this curriculum. What you have here is this I'm on life support, I have an iron lung, I have a pacemaker, I'm limping along, and that's what you have, But one day I'll be a man of understanding, and then, you'll look back and you go, how come we couldn't have that guy when we were going through this? But right now, it's just what we have, right? So there we are. Okay. Well, so what I want to do is show you that this actually goes beyond being for a pastor or being for a deacon, but this actually does go, as Linda said, members of the individual members of the assembly, and she was right on target with that, because what Paul is going to write to Timothy about is how people who are just members of the assembly are actually going to be utilized to turn around and help. Yeah, they're going to, you may not be the one standing up in front of the assembly every week, but there's someone that's going to come in the door And they're going to make a friendship with you, and you're going to find opportunity after opportunity to help them along through this deal. And I just want to show you this passage in Titus. But speak thou the things which become sound doctrine. By the way, that's not just a general term. You understand, that's within the parameters of this education we're talking about. That the aged men be sober. And you know what he's written? Now, yes, he is talking about the older men. But he says that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, and charity and patience. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober. Now, all I'm after here, I'm not so much after this list, but what I'm after is, why would it use the aged and to teach the younger? Because in a normal situation, they would have gone further through their sonship than someone who is younger. It won't always be that way. The truth is, you know, Audie and Kim will become young men and wise men, men of understanding, at about the same time that the rest of this group gets there in the curriculum. And that's why I was saying earlier, the generation is not just about age, but he's using this. And then look what he says, young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded. Why? And who's going to, let me be clear, what this isn't talking about is, well, son, let me tell you something. I was working a job when you still wet behind the ears. And so I'm going to tell you, you know, something. You can get that at the Moose Lodge. You don't need sonship to do that kind of thing. We're talking about people who understand how to handle the Word of God and make a right application of it. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who understand the doctrine and the exhortations and know how to use them. Are you with me there? So he's not just talking about, I've heard that preached that way. Well, when you get older, you know a lot more than you do about these younger folks. Well, I got news for you. You're younger than a lot of preachers, and they don't know what you know about sonship. So it's not about that. It's about this sound doctrine that he's been talking to Timothy about as a level 3 son. We just got through looking at this with Timothy. Commit to others who'll be able to teach others also. Now he's saying to Titus, hey, you got some folks in your assembly, and they're not a pastor and they're not a deacon, but you're going to use them to instruct and help and teach these youngers that are coming along. Okay, I think everybody gets that, okay? So verse 9, exhort servants to be obedient unto their own master. See this word exhort? When he tells you that, you know what he's counting on you knowing? Now, by the way, what we're looking at here, this is a level 3 issue, but is it a phase 1 or phase 2? In phase 1, you have to go back and learn the curriculum from the standpoint of a father. Yes? Once you've done that, you're now able to do this. Right? So that's a phase 2 issue. And that means you know what exhortation to use. When he says, young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded, you'll know how to do that. When he says exhort servants to be obedient unto their own master, you'll know what exhortation to use, and you'll know why you're using that one. Does that make sense? I'm not saying you know it now. I'm just saying you will when you become a level 3 son. You'll get it. You'll understand. You'll know. Okay? And let's see. Because I don't want to get off track. Oh, let me give you this next one. Verse 7. I skipped verse 7 here, but I got to look at it, and I thought we really need to look at that. Because look, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works. In doctrine, showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that he that is of the contrary part may be ashamed, having no evil thing to say of you. Now when he says, you know, showing yourself a pattern, he's saying all these things that you're going to be teaching other folks have to be the things that are at work in your life too, right? And he said you're supposed to be that pattern. In fact, when those folks come in a year or 2 from now and they look at you, if some young couple comes in, they're supposed to look at another couple in here and go, man, I wish we knew what they know. I wish we were where they are. That's a good thing for them to want to do that. Huh?
Is this also part of the reputation in the heavens?
Well, you learned about that back here, but from that point onward, that reputation's on the line. So yeah, you can certainly include that in there. Absolutely. Okay, now there's more to see about this, but I didn't want to get into the things of the passage. I really just wanted to show you, these are level 3 issues in the pastoral epistles, because to be a pastor, you're supposed to be a level 3 son. See? That's what's supposed to be happening. Okay. Now, let me show you a couple of things. I have to go back to the table of contents to show you this. Proverbs 1:5, leaving verse 6 off for right now, so let's read it. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. You know what he's going to hear. That pauses, so you say, what is it he's going to hear?
He's going to hear it from the Father.
Okay, he's going to hear what from the Father? Of course, he's going to hear it from the Father. What is it? And then she did this. Like, don't you know what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, she's right. You are going to hear something from your Father. Remember, it's not, well done, thou good and faithful servant. You may hear that, but that's not what this is. What is this? You're going to have to go back and be taught the education from the Father's point of view. In other words, to understand this is how... if you don't know those things as you teach it, you know what you'll do? You'll skip something or you'll shortcut something that was necessary. There'll be a checkpoint you'll pass over, and you won't know until too late that there was something lacking in your son's understanding, and now it's taking him off in a wrong direction. You see what I'm, or he'll be going, this isn't working for me. And you'll be going, well, I don't understand why. It'll be because you missed one of those markers that was supposed to tell you what he was missing. So you can't afford to skip those kinds of things. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to take you, by the way, if that's what he's going to hear, let's put it in a nutshell. Somebody tell me again, what is it he's going to hear?
Father's methodology.
Okay, the Father's methodology. Give it to me in your own words. What's he going to hear? Are you... Come on, Linda, say something. Okay, see, I'm glad we're going through it this way. He's going to hear the whole curriculum from the standpoint of the Father, as the teacher. He's going to hear the whole curriculum. Okay, everybody got that in your mind? Okay, that's what he'll hear. He'll hear the whole curriculum again from a whole different standpoint. He's already been through it as a son. Now he needs to be taught how to teach it. And he's going to have to go through the whole curriculum again to do that. See, what you realize is you're going to go through the whole curriculum. We're going to do it as sons. And in 25 years, when that's finished, we're going to go through it again. This time as a father. By the way, you do understand that this second time through, you're not learning all the things you learned first. All that's effectually working in you. This will be a much easier thing to do. You understand. By the way, can I just say it to you this way? The further you go through the curriculum, the faster the levels happen. This orientation is longer than establishment. Establishment is longer than the education starting. This part of the education is longer than this. And this is longer than this. And this is longer than this. So the good news is this is going to go faster and faster. See? Yes?
There on Proverbs 1:5, if we just put it in our mind where it says a wise man will hear, if we put a wise man will hear again.
Yeah, sure, you could say it that way. A wise man will hear again. I like that. Because actually in your notes have that word in there in all caps. A wise man will, did you look at my notes? A wise man will hear again. Yes, he will. And now here's the last thing I need to ask you before we take our break. And will increase learning. What is that talking about?
What you have on the board.
Okay, you're talking about this, right? Okay. Now, there's really two parts to increase learning. Will the son actually increase his own understanding of things as he goes through it? Of course he will. Of course. But notice the article is missing. He didn't say, because the way you want to read that if you don't understand sonship is you want to say, a wise man will hear and will increase in knowledge. That's the way we think of it. I'm using the words we would think of. But it's not necessarily about him increasing in knowledge. He will. But what he's really talking about is increase learning. In other words, that it's going to go out from him for someone else. Okay, and you've got, everybody understand that?
Yeah, every teacher learns a shortcut from their student because the student has to understand it and say back in their word, the teacher says, hey, I like that.
Okay, there you go. All right, now, is everybody with me so far? All right. Now, we're almost to the spot where we're going to take up, we're going to leave the exhortations, and we're going to move to the doctrine, and we'll do that when we come back from the break. So go ahead and take a break, and then